Fusion Mobile, quality e-learning experience on the go.
International Economic Organization. An international economic organization may be defined as the coming together of different countries with a common economic interest and goals, with a view of promoting economic cooperation and development amongst member states, to protect and promote the economic and business interests of the members. Some of the major international economic organizations include the following: International Monetary Fund, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the European Economic Community, the African Development Bank, Economic Commission for Africa, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, the West African Clearing House, the Niger Basin Commission, Economic Community of West African States (ECOWAS), and the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade (GATT). We'll be looking at the aims, objectives, and roles of each of these organizations. History of ECOWAS. Economic Community of West African States (ECOWAS) is being defined as a sub-regional organization formed by West African countries to promote cooperation and development in all economic fields, contributing to the progress and development of African continent. History of ECOWAS. On 28 May 1975, the heads of states and governments of 15 independent states of West Africa converged in Lagos, where they signed the treaty formerly known as ECOWAS. Its aim was to liberate West African countries economically from imperialism. Its headquarters was in Lagos but now in Abuja. Aims and objectives of ECOWAS. The aims and objectives of ECOWAS include: 1. Elimination of custom duties, establishment of tariffs, establishment of common fund, harmonization of monetary policies, abolition of obstacles to free movement, abolition of trade restrictions, and promotion of cooperation and development. Economic Commission for Africa (ECA). It is a regional organ of the United Nations established in 1958 to contribute to the development of Africa. It has its headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Aims and objectives of Economic Commission of Africa. Its aims and objectives include: 1. To promote the social and economic development of Africa as a whole. It played a significant role in the establishment of African Development Bank (ADB). It aids in the acceleration of economic integration of the sub-regions. 4. It provides technical assistance for economic planning and implementation of projects in Africa. And lastly, the harmonization and clarification of the development strategies and policies that African countries should pursue. International Monetary Fund (IMF). The International Monetary Fund was established in 1944 by experts of 44 nations. During a meeting at Bretton Woods, it was a modification of the gold currency standard and it came into operation in 1947, with its headquarters in Washington, D.C., United States. Aims and objectives of International Monetary Fund. Its aims and objectives include: 1. To eliminate exchange control, to serve as a clearinghouse for member nations, to give advice and help members solve their domestic economic problems, to contribute to the development of the productive resources of all member nations, to help developing nations pay their trading partners in foreign currency, to promote international monetary corporations and the expansion of international trade, and lastly, to standardize currencies by ensuring currency stability and preventing disloyal competition by depression of the rate of exchange. International Bank for Reconstruction and Development (IBRD). The International Bank for Reconstruction and Development is an international financial institution and organ of the United Nations, established with the main objective of providing development funds in form of loans and technical assistance to poor nations. It is properly known as World Bank and was established at the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944. Aims, objectives and roles of IBRD. Its aims include to promote the long-range balanced growth of international trade and the maintenance of equilibrium in balance of payments, to help raise the standard of living in developing countries by channeling financial resources to those countries, to promote technical assistance to member nations, and to promote foreign investments. African Development Bank (ADM). The African Development Bank (ADM) was established in 1964 with the help of OAU and ECA. It is made up of some independent African countries that also see to its finance. Its headquarters is in Abidjan, capital of Côte d'Ivoire. Aims, objectives and roles of ADM. They include 1. To contribute to the economic integration of African countries, provision of funds for the development of agricultural sectors of member states, to provide technical assistance for development projects and programs, and lastly, to grant loans to governments of member states and private firms. Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries (OPEC). As a reaction to the outrageous and unprecedented exploitation by the oil extracting multinational companies, which at that time were controlling oil operations in the oil industry in the host nations, 5 of the third world oil producing countries met at Baghdad, the capital of Iraq, to form a countervailing power bloc against the oil companies. The outcome of the meeting of Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela, held from September 10 to 14, 1960, aimed at protecting their mutual interests and to counter the atrocious acts of foreign oil companies who produce and sell the oil in accordance with their own interests and the dictates of their government's foreign policies, was the formation of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries (OPEC). Aims, objectives and roles of OPEC. The aims, objectives and roles of OPEC include 1. Stabilization of oil income of its member nations. It fixes and allocates production quotas to member states to ensure steady supply of oil to consuming nations, to negotiate for the participation of member nations in the oil exploitation and exploration, and lastly, stabilization of price of oil in the world market in order to eliminate fluctuations. West African Clearinghouse (WAEC). The WAEC is a multilateral clearing mechanism comprising of 10 member central banks, which covers 15 states of the West African sub-region. It was established in June 1975 with the headquarters in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and has English and French as its official working language. Aims, objectives and roles of WAEC. Its aims, objectives and roles include 1. To encourage trade liberalization, to foster monetary cooperation in the sub-region, to bring about savings in the use of foreign reserves, and lastly, to promote the use of members' national currencies for intra-sub-regional transactions. General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade (GATT). GATT is a multilateral agreement regulating international trade. Its purpose was the substantial reduction of tariffs and other trade barriers and the elimination of preferences and mutually advantageous bases. It was negotiated during the United Nations Conference on Trade and Employment and was the outcome of the failure of negotiating governments to create International Trade Organization. It was signed by 23 nations in Geneva on October 30, 1947, and took effect on January 1, 1948. Its aims and objectives include 1. The expansion of international trade, the development and full utilization of world resources, raising standard of living of the world community as a whole, and the increase of world production. United Nations Conference on Trade and Development (UNCTAD). It was established in 1964 with its secretariat in Geneva, Switzerland. It came into existence to complement the activities of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which lays down rules for international trade. Aims, objectives, and rules of UNCTAD. They include 1. It helps developing countries to solve their balance of payments and deficits. Promoting international trade. Aiding economic development, especially of the developing countries. National Broadcasting Commission (NBC). It started in Nigeria in the year 1932 as Empire Service of the British Broadcasting to 1992, when broadcasting in Nigeria was deregulated, owned by the national or state government. Its aims and objectives include regulating and controlling the broadcast industry, undertaking research and development in the broadcast industry, upholding the principles of equity and fairness in broadcasting, monitoring broadcasting for harmful emission, interference, and illegal broadcasting, advising the federal military government on the implementation of the national mass communication policy with reference to broadcasting, and lastly, promoting authenticated radio and television audience measurements and penetration.